Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Therapy Matters podcast, your one-stop resource for expert insights and advice on everything therapy and rehab. I'm your host, Allison Jones, and today I'm joined by Jimmy McKay, host of Pintcast. Jimmy, it's great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Killer intro. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I mean, very Truman Showy, right? That was Truman Show. Jim Carrey. Good morning, good afternoon, good night.
Yeah, I just got to cover all the bases. We don't know. We don't know when people are listening. So
No, that's right. Like, no matter when we're recording, the cool part, right? The asynchronous part of podcasting is I don't know where you are, when you are. Message to the future, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, before we dive into our conversation today, I just want to give the audience a little bit of background on who Jimmy McKay is. So I kind of like shortchanged you a little bit. I said that you're, the host of PT Pintcast, but you're a little bit more than that, right? You're a PT, you're a former DJ. So take a minute, tell us a little bit about who Jimmy McKay is and your road to where we are today.
Well, we're all more than just our title, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
So who is Jimmy McKay? I think Jimmy McKay is still trying to figure it out. I think we all are.
Right.
So I mean, for all intents and purposes, the nickel version is all I wanted to do as a kid was be a radio DJ, and that was back in the mid '90s when I discovered rock radio. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I like it. And then I went to school for broadcasting, and I did that. I worked at my hometown radio station. I got to intern for a big radio station in New York City, where the morning guy was a guy by the name of Howard Stern. That's what everybody wants to know, the stories.
Yeah.
Human Resources has told me, you can't tell any of those stories anymore. No, those aren't allowed.
No.
And then I worked at or ran radio stations for 15 something years, and then a pivot. Right, I didn't think a guy in a black turtleneck walking on a stage could really change my life, but Steve Jobs did, and he walked on stage with this thing, and that's why you're saying good morning, good afternoon, and good night, because time and space sort of shifted with the smartphone and the internet and how these things connected and how you could send pictures, sounds, and words. So I sort of pivoted. I looked in 2008, and I was running, a radio station, or actually I was running 2 radio stations, and I was living my dream. But something just felt like this was going to change monumentally, and I played that game which we all play, right? When we're trying to figure who we are. If you had $10 million, what would you actually be doing if you didn't need to work? And I decided that I was a bad athlete. I was a triathlete, right? So I like triathlon because I like to be able to be mediocre at 3 things in one day. So it combines my loves for athletics and efficient mediocrity. And I said, well, what could I do in this? Could I be a coach? Could I do this? And I had been around enough physical therapists where I was like, I kind of like how people walk away from you. They walk away feeling or looking like they feel better, empowered, more in control of themselves.
Yeah.
So I watched interactions, just verbal interactions with physical therapists and people after a long bike ride, just with a triathlon club. And I was like, you never touched that person. And then they walked away sort of taller, or what happened there? What verbal voodoo were you doing there? That's cool. So sort of knew I was exiting radio because, again, Steve Jobs, and it sort of ushered in this ability of what it's going to look like in the future. Same time, YouTube was sort of blowing up, and I was like, this looks like TV. That's YouTube. This looks like radio. It's podcasting, and posting on a website or a blog or an article. There's newspaper. So it's a parallel. And so dropped everything and went back to PT school, hung up the headphones. I was like, that's it. I'm done. And I'm going to go do this new thing. And love physical therapy. But while I was a student, I watched a presentation on stage, and the person, had the buttoned up to the top, and they were super formal. It was a room full of 1,000 people, and people saying like, "Doctor, do you concur? I concur. I concur. Do you concur?" But I didn't understand I understood most of what was going on, but I wanted to understand more. But I wasn't going to raise my hand in a room full of 1,000 people and be like, "Stop the presses! I'm the idiot. What are you talking about?"
Right.
2 hours later, the networking hour, which is code for happy hour, right, at a conference, and there was the presenter across the bar, and I made my way over there, and I just said, "Hey, I'm Jimmy. I'm a second-year student, and I saw your presentation. Could you help me understand it more?" Actually, I just said, "I saw your presentation. I didn't really get it," which is not a great way to introduce yourself to someone.
Probably not.
Probably not. But he saw right through me, like, okay, like what did you not understand? And I said, "Oh, this, what do you mean by that?" And I understood his entire 90-minute presentation in 11 and a half minutes. And I was like, well, what's the difference? And I locked onto the difference being we were having a conversation. On stage, he was giving this presentation, and he tried to become a presenter instead of just being a human, which he was. He's a human when he wakes up and during the day when he goes to bed. Why did he change on stage? He thought he had to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to drive back to PT school. I was with 3 classmates, and and this is 2015 when you had to explain to people what a podcast was still. Right now, more people have podcasts than don't have podcasts. We've reached that tipping point. And I pitched the idea of like, what if I just went around and like used my radio background to like talk to smart people and like take up someone who has this 90-minute presentation. And what if I just had a beer with them and broke it down? And all 3 classmates said, that is a horrible idea. Don't do that. That's just study, man. Just study and graduate. But it stayed with me. And I eventually pitched the idea to my advisor. And she is, she had a PhD in biochemistry and she was a physical therapist. And she was like, I have no idea what a podcast is. I have no idea how this would work, or I don't even, but she said, you look terribly excited about this, like this idea. And then she goes, what's the worst case scenario? I was like, I'm down $80 for buying a microphone. And she's like,
do it.
I don't know, man. She goes, I'll introduce you to a bunch of people I know that I think are interesting, and I'll buy the first round of beers. And I was like, don't threaten me with a good time. So I did that. And the cool part was, we might say first mover advantage. I wasn't the first PT podcast, but I was early. And the North Star was have fun, learn stuff. Like I used it as a Trojan horse. The show is a Trojan horse. If I didn't know something, I knew I didn't learn well, just go and read an article about it or get in the book. I love books, but like not like that. I like reading books for fun. For learning, I just want to can you just explain it to me? Just like break it down for me, like very verbal and visual, right? So I used it as a Trojan horse. When I had to write a paper in PT school about vestibular care, I reached out to Becky Bliss, who I just found online Googling. And Becky was like, yeah, let's talk. And then like everything in that episode was me like essentially asking questions that I just turned into my paper. Here's the thing. My classmates were like, you can't do that. And I'm like, you most certainly do that. That is how people write articles, and that's how people write books. So it was a cheat code, because then Becky at the end of the episode was like, I have a Google Drive folder with like, these are the papers I would include in Cite. And that's a cheat code. It sounds like I cheated, but I reached out to a super smart person and asked them questions about stuff.
Right. That's not cheating.
That's not cheating. That's a cheat code
smart.
Of life.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Smarter, not harder, baby.
Right.
So did that, and I lucked out. And the show sort of, I think again, first mover. I was one of the first people out there doing it my way. I could not do it another way. Other people were clinicians trying to be radio DJs. I was a radio DJ trying to be a PT. So I was the salmon swimming in no matter what direction anybody was doing. I just approached things differently. Here's the cool part. Everybody does that. Like you have your own direction, even if I was just exactly like this person. I was a clinician and I did that. You'd approach it differently because you have a different lived experience and you've got a different vibe, and I wouldn't want to do it like that. I don't want my podcast to sound like a radio show like yours, Jimmy. Great. Don't.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that. And then since then, I've left clinical practice. I haven't treated in a clinic in several years, but I help organizations. I try to sum it up by saying I help make good work well known, or good work understandable. I don't care who you are. If you're a practice, I want other clinicians to understand why they should work with you, because this is a place for them if they fit this. I want the public to understand, here's why. I want to use advertising principles to communicate the value of physical therapy, because just saying we are an evidence-based practice, and I'm like noise.
Right.
No one understands what that means.
Yeah.
So I get to be in rooms where I'm the only clinician in a marketing or a communications meeting, and I'm the only marketer or communicator in a clinical meeting. So I just speak both languages fluently, and I get to bounce back and forth. And in the end, I like to think anyway, everybody wins.
Since we're both podcast hosts, we have the distinct pleasure of speaking to a lot of really smart people, as you said. And we get to learn a lot through those conversations. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, like what we've learned from our, collective experiences talking to other PT folks, other folks within the industry. And so I'm going to hit you with a pretty big question, like
ooh, okay.
right out of the gate. Let's just dive right into it. What do you think is the biggest challenge that the PT industry faces today?
Ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the deep, profound answer, and I can say that and then stroke my chin and sound like I'm profound, but then you have to explain.
Yeah.
Let me tell it this way, right? So you're super good at something and you want the world to understand you. And I think that's the mistake. So Simon Sinek said, start with why. And he's got the most viewed TED Talk ever, but I'm going to disagree with Simon Sinek. Kinda. He says start with why. I think you have to start with who. And what I mean by that is if you have a skill and a talent and a skill, those are two different things, right? So talent will get you so far, skill because you've worked on it. And I know you have. If you're listening to a physical therapy podcast outside of work hours, you're probably trying to improve yourself, right? So you're talking to a small percentage. I think you need to pay attention to the other person first. And I'll give you an analogy. Let's say I were back in college and Jimmy was trying to get a date. This did happen. I won't go into specifics.
Okay.
But I didn't do so well my freshman and sophomore year. I couldn't figure out why, Allison. I would meet girls, and that went well.
Yeah.
And then I would tell them all about how I was the captain of the high school hockey team and how smart I was and how many different projects I was on. Yeah, I would tell them all about me.
Yeah.
No second date. Couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. It's all about you.
Junior and senior year, as I figured out, is when I would go on a first date and I would ask questions and I would be interested. Things got real different junior and senior year. And I think I see that. So when I say I think our biggest limitation is ourselves, is we, in an altruistic way, can't wait to show everybody how smart we are, freshman and sophomore year. When in reality, you have to speak to me, if I'm the audience, about me in words that I use, in ways that I communicate, about things that either bother me, limit me, or things I want to become. Everybody's the main character in their own story. And if you come in talking about how you're the captain of the high school hockey team and how smart you are and how amazing your internships were this summer, that puts distance between you and the audience. They're like, as the kids would say, cool story, bro. Tell it again. Like, thanks for telling me about you. So I think Simon Sinek says start with why. I think in order to get to why, you have to ask a couple other questions. The first is who? Who? The second is what? What problems? I call them bads and goods. What are the bads? The things that you are limiting you, the hurdles, the things that just plain annoy you. And goods, the opposites of the bads. What do you want to become? What would you like to do? So that's who. Who am I talking to? What are their bads and goods? And then you have to do a self-reflection. Then you come in. What are your bads and goods? What are the things you can help people go from and to? And when you have those things, who, what for them, what for you, in a nice, pretty Venn diagram where those things cross, that is your shared why. From then on, I agree with Simon Sinek.
Okay.
And then stuff gets real easy. It's how, where, when. How is just how you communicate that. Does it have to be in person? No. Allison and I are talking right now in February of 2024, and you're listening to this some other time in some other place.
Right.
But does it have to be audio? Could be video. We're also recording a video. That's great. Could this be broken down into an article? Could we make an Instagram carousel or tweet thread? Yes. Because if that's where people communicate, or that's how they ingest information, that's how you should do it. So I think our biggest problem is ourself. In an altruistic way, I think there's a nugget of good is we can't wait to tell and show people how smart we are, and that's a mistake. I like why you're doing it. I just don't like what you're doing and how you're doing it. Stop that. Talk to me about me. I'll listen to you all day.
How do you advise? Because this is what you do as part of your day in and day out.
Yeah.
How do you advise PTs on how to get started with making that shift?
Yeah. So all right, there's there's three ways. DIY, do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You got a house and you want it to look better, feel better, whatever. Do it yourself. So you got to teach yourself. That's high effort, low cost. Well, there's some cost in there, right? Because you're going to screw up and your time, you're going to spend 10 times as much time renovating your own kitchen as you would if a professional did it, right? So there's DIY. There's DWY, do it with you. You could hire someone to do it with you. That's a coach. That's a physical therapist, right? You could rehab yourself, or you could hire a physical therapist, right, to do it with you. Or the third is someone does it for you. And this analogy drops out in physical therapy. Physical therapists do not do anything for you. We might plan things out. That's doing it with you. The actual magic happens with you. So in terms of communication, though, you can hire someone. Go to big companies. They have directors of communications. They have a director of marketing, a director of communications, a director of public relations. It's because when you scale enough, these things are different. They're similar, not the same, right? So you can do it yourself. Someone can do it with you, or someone can do it for you. Each of these involves different amounts of effort, right? So you hire someone to do it for you. Small effort. You still have to manage that person, but they're going to do a lot because they're skilled. So you have to decide what's the ROI. If you're a single practice owner in your town, you're like the only PT, right? I don't think you should hire a director of marketing. Not off the bat.
No.
But can you learn simple practices to do that? I would say yes. And then what are those? I'll give you one. People all the time. I got friends who are like, I don't know if marketing's going to work for me, man. I go, oh, apparently you're the exception. Okay, keep going. Well, I don't like being on TikTok. I think that's stupid. Like, everybody loves to mock that. That's the thing to mock for them. All the stupid dances and the stupid videos. Okay, good. Don't do that. Where do you consume content? Well, I don't really like being on social media. So you're not on it at all. No. Okay, that's okay. You're telling me nobody you can help ever looks at these things and consumes content. That is an arrogant thing to say.
Yeah.
It's just misaligned. I always tell people, start with the type of communication content that you like to consume. Don't like podcasts? Don't want to talk? Don't make podcasts. Don't do that. Don't like being on camera? Doesn't mean you can't make videos, because you don't have to be on camera to create videos. It doesn't have to be about you talking to you. And I hear this recently a lot with physical therapists, because they're like, well, all these big accounts, I see all these PTs with 50,000 followers, and they do all these exercise videos. That means I need to go on Instagram and do exercise videos. Do you?
No.
Do you? Because I don't think, what do you like to do? That's going to shine through.
Right.
So I tell people, start creating content in ways that you like to consume content. And then I look at them and I go, let's be dead honest here. Your first 50 are going to suck. So now I start to talk about the emotion. I want to remove the emotion. I give them permission to understand. Listen, if you listen to the first 50 radio broadcasts that I did, I physically could not listen to those now. I was horrible.
Yeah.
But I said, in the end, you told me your goal was to help people. I'm telling you this is showing, not telling, because I don't care that you're in physical therapy. I don't care. You don't have to be a podcaster. You're in show business. You tell someone how to do an exercise, or you show them how to do the exercise, right? Which one is more effective, right?
Right.
So you're in show business, whether you like it or not, as vapid and thin as that might sound. You're in show business. You're just leaving the clinic walls. That's all this is allowing you to do, however you want. You can do it yourself. Learn from other people. There are YouTube channels that just show people how to create content. Great. Spend time. Find someone within your organization who sort of likes it, even if they're bad at it. I'll take somebody who's got, can I say bad words in this show?
No.
No. Find someone who has a little bit of give a. There we go.
Yeah.
I need someone who cares.
Right.
That's sort of the prerequisite. You give me someone who really, really cares and who really gives a. I'll teach you I teach that skill. It's communicating at scale. That can be learned. I know it can be learned. I went to school. I have a degree in it, which means you can teach it to a degree.
Right.
So I would say, what type of content do you want to create, or what type of content should you create? What do you like consuming? And then understand that your first 50 are going to suck. How bad do you want it? Willing to go to 51, 101, 501 and see what works.
But it's also like, so it might not be the best, your first 50 might not be your best, but it's going to be you. It's going to be authentic to who you are. Yep. So that still will shine through in your content and will resonate with the folks that you want to attract, like attract your tribe, type of concept. So even if they're bad, they're still going to be effective.
And they won't be as bad as you will think it is a negative 465. The average person's going to be like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Like nothing resonated. That's net neutral.
Right.
Right. I tell people all the time, well, my email campaign didn't work. I'm like, how many emails did you send? I'm like 6. This is where I love talking to PTs in PT language. This is why I get to jump back and forth. What's your goal here? Well, I want to make $10,000 extra a month. Okay. We got to have some micro goals here. Because that's like saying, I want to go from not running to running the Olympic trials and the marathon.
All right, Jimmy. So the question is, how do PT survive then?
Heavy, right?
Yeah.
So we talked before about Darwin, right? Darwin's like super quoted, right? If he were a published author today, he'd be like the most cited. Right. Somebody check the number of Darwin citations. It's a lot. But he's misquoted because like everybody's like strongest to survive. And that's like the tattoo, people get the tattoo or they put that on their Facebook profile. But it's not, because the quote is, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that's the most adaptable to change. So it's like you could get mad about another healthcare provider survive. I can't believe that why he's not as good as me. It's like, well, you don't get to decide. So it's adaptable to change. And people will say all the time, the worst phrase to use is, this is the way we've always done it. People will say that, but then they'll do it the same way. They'll get angry. And I agree. Like every once in a while, something comes along and changes your plans, man. My goal was to be in cargo shorts and a Guns N' Roses t-shirt as a radio DJ forever, because that's all it was. There was really no mass change in terms of communication from when I was 12 years old and heard Nirvana for the first time and said, I want to be a radio DJ, to when I was 25 years old running a radio station and hosting my own radio show 6 days a week. And then in 2008, it did. And I was like, oh, man. But I prepared for a world this was the skill set that you needed. And as soon as you reached a certain level, you could sort of skate or get better. And then all of a sudden I had to adapt. And I didn't like the way that looked. And some people would say like, well, winners never quit. Should have powered through, Jimmy. But have you ever read anything from Seth Godin? He's like a business writer.
Yes.
Super smart guy.
Yep.
Not a lot of hair, but nice, smart guy. Mm-hmm. And he said, winners do quit. Winners quit all the time. They just know what to quit and when to quit.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there at, 33 years old, I think I might have been 32. And I was like, I've been doing this I was in radio since I was 17. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this. Like there's no whatever you want to insert the word. And so I started to pivot, and that's when I pivoted away. So how do PTs survive? Adapt. Look at it and step back and say, where's the world going? Where does my solution fit? And you're just looking at I know it could be overwhelming, but just look at it from the W's, right? Who, what, them and you, why, and then how, where, when. It changes. Again, newspapers or articles or blogs. Podcasting is radio. YouTube is TV, right? This is words, sounds, and moving pictures and images, right? Infographics or whatever you want to share, Instagram, right? So it's simple, but it's not easy.
And it's not just your communication strategy, right? It's not just your marketing strategy.
No, I was just right, correct.
It's your whole. You got to look at your entire way that you're practicing therapy from the beginning to the end, right? So we have a good example there is like just consumerization. You keep holding up your iPhone. I don't have my phone here. I'd be holding up my iPhone too. Like this is how patients want to interact with your practice, right? I want to be able to book my appointment on my phone. I want to be able to check my patient portal on my phone. I want to be able to sit on my couch at midnight and book my next PT appointment.
Change my appointment. Oh man,
right?
Something just popped up. I had an appointment at 11. Can I change it?
Yeah. So, and a lot of therapy practices don't have that right now.
No, they don't.
You got to adapt. You got to adjust to that. You got to meet your patients where they want to be.
Yeah.
So it's not just your communication style. It's across the board.
Yes. So like I would say everything sort of is communications. That's my lens. Of course, I'm going to see that, right? This is how I look at it. But I was asked a question in communications school, right? So I went to a Catholic university, St. Bonaventure University, and the professor for public relations was a brother. Brown robe, rope around his waist, right? Talked like he was out of the Bible, right? Super smart guy. And he asked, what's public relations? And of course, a bunch of, 19-year-old students are trying to like wow the professor with these great deep answers. And finally, he just shook his head and he was like, silly children. Public relations is building a relationship with the public. You can have a good relationship. You can have a bad relationship. But there's no maintain. You're either getting better or getting worse. You're either getting stronger or your muscles atrophying. So I think being able to change your appointment on your phone at any time, easy with 3 clicks, that is communications. That's user experience or user design and technology.
Exactly.
But that's part of that public relation. Because if it's annoying, that annoys me.
Right.
Our relationship is now frayed. Right. So this is a relationship build. And that's sort of what I put communications and marketing in. I go, what do people know about you? What do they say about you when you're not in the room? It's super frustrating. I can't book an appointment. There's 3 or 4 local barbers in our town. Mm-hmm. And one like skyrocketed and everybody's like, that's the place to be. He's great. He got so busy. He never hired any more people and you couldn't get an appointment on a phone. 2 other places came into town, booking on the phones. They have hours after hours and hours on the weekend. And guess what happened? That's a pivot. Yep. They adapted. He did not. Guess who benefits from that?
Right. Yeah. And it's something I'm probably going to misquote the statistic, but it's something like 86%. I think the study showed like 86% of people will leave their provider if they have a bad experience with them.
Shouldn't you though?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Shouldn't you?
Absolutely. You should expect great things from the services that you're paying for. And healthcare is a service just like anything else.
Correct.
And when I go to a doctor, if I go to a PT, I want you to treat me like a person. I want you to listen to me. I want you to engage with me. And I want you to have the tools that I want to interact with you.
Yeah. It's an inverse relationship, right? It's like 15 years ago, there might have been 20 barbers in town.
Yeah.
But I only knew about 3, so there were only 3, right? And then I didn't know if I was going to have options.
Right.
Well, so the parallel is people say like, oh, the kids these days, everybody's attention span shrinking. You're telling me we've evolved? Our brains have evolved that fast? We have options. We're a flick away. I'm a search away from finding someone else. That's why you have to adapt. The strong survive, the most adaptable to change survives there. I don't care that you're better. If I don't know about you, that's the greatest rock song no one's ever heard. Cool story, bro. Tell it again. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, when we're talking about, the technology curve, you don't necessarily have to be on that bleeding edge. You don't have to be right there, but you don't want to be at the laggard side.
Oh, yeah. I lurk all the time. I cheat.
Yeah.
I mean, Picasso said, good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yes.
So a lot of time, like Apple Vision Pro is a great example, right? Things, I don't know how much it costs. We can look it up, but it's, goggles, looks like ski goggles, and they're virtual reality, augmented reality, whatever you want to call. Do you need to go buy them right now and dive all in and be like, I'm integrating this in my practice tomorrow? No. But pay attention. Sniff around, watch what other people are doing, and then go, okay, is this a good fit? Does this help me do more of what I like to do and I'm good at and what people expect of me? No? Great. Leave it there. It's not for me. The parallel in radio was, record reps are the people who come in and pitch. They got a bunch of artists and they come in. You got to play this new song. Everyone's going to be playing it. And I was taught you don't get beat by the songs you don't play. Because for 3.5 minutes, I am Pearl Jam. Or I'm your band that I don't have faith in, but they're playing on the psychology of scarcity, or someone else is going to get it and you don't. Mm-hmm. And I was taught very early, you don't get beat by the songs that you don't play. So you don't get beat by the stuff that you don't do. You get beat because the stuff that you do isn't solving problems, right? And people will leave. So you don't need to be on the bleeding edge of anything. Don't like talking? Don't start a podcast. Don't like typing emails? Great, don't send emails. What do you like and who do you want to connect with? Try to connect with one person. What's the way to do that? The tools we have allow us to connect with lots of people at once. If you try to talk to everybody at once, you miss. Try to talk to one person and I feel like you're talking to me, and now you're talking to me. Again, talk to me about me. I'll listen to you all day.
We're running out of time here. So let me ask you one more question. Final thoughts for our listeners. Final recommendations for our listeners. What would you leave them with?
I would say we're past the tipping point of me needing to come in and tell people you need to start communicating.
Yeah.
In fact, you're already, as I mentioned, you're already communicating. You're either doing it well or poorly. You decide. It's not as hard as you think. Mm-hmm. Takes a little bit of psychology and going, I'm uncomfortable here. But we're lifelong learners. We love to brag about that as healthcare providers. We're lifelong learners. This is a new skill that either you can do it yourself, do it with someone, or someone does it for you. But it's something that needs to be done now. You need to adapt, or as Darwin would say, you're going to be evolved out.
Words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom. Make me sound prophetic. I like it.
Yeah. So, Jimmy, where can people find you?
I kept it simple. I mentioned like sort of the origin story. If you're still listening, I'm baffled how you're still listening to me ramble on about these things. But I wanted to name the podcast and all the things that I do similar to that first experience at a conference, right? Where I didn't understand, then I met him in the bar. So it's PT for physical therapy and Pintcast because we were having a pint and I figured, back in 2015 when everybody was starting a podcast, it was something cast. So it's called PT Pintcast, the website, the socials, the whole nine.
Excellent. All right. Definitely tune in to the next episode of PT Pintcast. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting ride, an exciting adventure. All right. So, Jimmy, we are out of time for today. I mean, we could certainly go on for hours and hours.
Yes, I could.
but that's it for today. I want to thank you so much for joining us and having a conversation with me. I really enjoyed it.
A pleasure.
And I want to thank our audience for tuning in to the Therapy Matters podcast, your one-stop resource for expert insights and advice on everything therapy and rehab. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to Therapy Matters. Do you like the podcast? Give us a 5-star rating, subscribe, and tell all your friends about the show. Want to be a guest or know someone that would be a great guest speaker? Contact me at allison.jones@raintreeinc.com. That's allison.jones@raintreeinc.com. Therapy Matters is brought to you by Raintree, therapy and rehab's favorite EMR. Raintree is the only all-in-one therapy EMR delivering a complete and seamless end-to-end patient journey, from first contact to payment to patient retention. To learn more about Raintree, visit us online at raintreeinc.com.